So I just had a thought. What if building a keyboard was a bad idea? There's no way, right?
Well, howdy hey, I'm Hipyo Tech, and I try keyboards so you don't have to. And is that true? Like, is there really no reason to build a custom keyboard? Well, kind of yes, but also definitely no. And in order to test this, I'm gonna show you how to pick out the parts to build your very first custom keyboard. Also, wait, are those keycaps $1?
What?
But what I also realized is that you might just wanna settle for a pre-built, because the difference is crazier than I thought. Like, can you tell the difference between either of these two keyboards?
Probably not.
But before we get too crazy, let's figure out how to get a keyboard.
Now, in order to do that, first we're going to have to buy everything. And where do we even start? Well, let's start with the place that could be more budget friendly, and that's AliExpress, this video's sponsor. Now, as you've seen on my channel, there are lots of places to get custom keyboards, but this could be one of them because they sell literally everything, even to their own detriment. And if you're building a keyboard at home, you need to start with a few things.
Now, there's a few reasons why someone would want to build a keyboard, but the number one reason is that choice is really important. Because you get to choose your keycaps, switches, and keyboard. Not to mention other fun accessories. This also gives you a lot more choice for different layouts, like if you like weird things or number pads. Now, building a keyboard is way different in 2024 because there's so many good options. But later in this video, I'll also show you that there's so many good options for pre-built keyboards, if you like specific things.
You might want to do work, and I'll explain why. Now, I scrolled through AliExpress for hours, but ultimately I went with something that you guys would not stop harassing me about, and that's the Sugar 65, a keyboard that gets as cheap as $58. Now, that's $58 off of our budget and will hopefully give us a solid base, but we'll look at this more later.
Now, when picking out your keyboard, I recommend you first start with budget, then move to layout, and then move to maybe aesthetics. This is hopefully a tool that you'll use every single day, so you want the layout to fit your needs, and you also want it to feel like a quality product. If you don't know where to start, then I recommend subscribing and watching some of my other stuff.
Next, we want switches. And honestly, there's way too many options. And where would you even know how to start? Well, we got a couple. And you probably should too, because how else are you gonna know what you like? Like, you could walk into a Best Buy and be like, let me try all of your keyboards. But most of their keyboards suck, so that really won't help. I suggest finding your preference. Do you want a switch that feels really smooth and thocky? Do you want a switch that feels clicky? Somebody out there does. Or maybe even tactile. When you press it down, there's a little bump.
Switches are the hardest part of building a keyboard and where a lot of people get super overwhelmed. The joy of building your own is you can try out a couple of them and you can always swap them out later very easily. But honestly, if you get anything that says it's factory looped, it's probably half decent. But then you'll want to look for keycaps and it can get a little bit weird.
Okay, what is this? I found capybara keycaps. You know we had to get those. Now, for the keycaps, it gets a little bit trickier because you need to find something that fits your keyboard's layout. If you buy a full-sized keyboard with a number pad, then odds are you're a little bit safer with some of these kits. However, you also need to be careful because AliExpress sells what we call clones, which is stolen artwork. Now, sets like this clearly steal novelty artwork. Not good. I recommend avoiding them. However, there is a bit more of a gray area, like these $2 keycap sets. You know we had to try a $2 keycap set. They're not stealing artwork, it's just colors, which honestly is a little bit cringe, but as a keycap designer, I'd be okay if somebody stole my colors. I wouldn't be okay if somebody stole my artwork. That's my hill to die on. Maybe yours too. And these X-ray style keycaps that I thought were very cool.
Also, when you're buying keycaps, Cherry Profile is like the standard, but then there's also stuff like XDA and DSA and really tall keycaps. This is something that's super fun to play around with because different keycap materials also make different sounds when you put them on your keyboard. But then on top of that, there's also really cute sets like Polycaps Hippo, my keycap set, but that's not budget.
But honestly, I recommend just scrolling through the list and finding something that makes you happy, because building a keyboard is like 90% about finding your aesthetic and what you think will look cool and sound cool and feel cool. And the choice is the coolest part. Well, you know, and the budget. Is this gonna be cheaper than buying a fully built keyboard? Maybe.
Also, building the keyboard will be easy and fun, but for those of you that are still too scared, I had to go back to my comment section. Because if a keyboard provided all that you wanted and you didn't have to build it, then what's the point of building a keyboard, right?
Now, I found the Bridge 75, but it's also a pre-order everywhere I looked in the US. And AliExpress did have it in stock for around $150 at the time. So it's a bit more expensive than it was supposed to be, but keep in mind this keyboard is 100-ish, and we'll be looking at it later. I bought some stuff.
Now, hopefully if you've bought a keycap, your keyboard, and switches, then you're ready to build a keyboard. But first, let's roll it back and start with the keyboard. And while mine did ship pretty quickly from AliExpress, and it was discounted using the codes on screen, it was also a little bit damaged.
Are you feeling lucky, punk? Huh? Are you? Okay, sorry. I'm gonna open the keyboard.
I also did see a few people that had issues with this keyboard coming dead on arrival, but AliExpress does have a good return policy. Now, this is the Lucky 65. It's also like the Sugar 65, and it's been rebranded a billion times, but it's a very affordable $58-ish aluminum keyboard. And when you're building your first keyboard, you could go super fancy and buy one of those really luxurious bare bones keyboards. And I love that for you. That's like super sick. Like, spend your money how you want. But I honestly recommend that you start cheap because you might want to tweak things, or you might want to change your layout, or you might just want to have fun. Now, this is a bare bones keyboard, and when you're looking for your own keyboard, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. This does have south-facing LEDs, which means that your keycap options are more expanded. It has wireless and wired options, if you remember where the hole is. And there's a lot of other weird small factors that you might not consider when buying your first keyboard. Like, what if it comes dead on arrival? Will they have good support? All of these things are things you should look into first. One thing this board does have is arrow keys. One thing it doesn't is an F row. It also has a very pretty back accent with a little 4-leaf clover cut into the back. This is what we call aesthetic, and it does serve some form of purpose in altering the sound of the final board. It also means that if you have a home intruder, then you can use this thing as a weapon. Now, the main thing that's special about this board is that it does a lot of things good enough, while also being ridiculously cheap. Like, something like this would have cost $200 all of a couple years ago. Now, it's also really nice when your board comes pre-installed with foams and other modding things like looped stabilizers, which this board does. These give you the option to customize the sound and the feel of your keyboard, and we'll talk about those more later. Now, when it comes to the switches, I bought two different options from AliExpress. First, these silly work HMX style switches, and then second, these Cudo milk candies. Now, one thing you can do is buy 10 of a couple different switch styles that you want, try all of them out, and figure out which you prefer the feel and sound of. I personally like a lightweight spring on my linear switches. Now, the HMX style switches are great if you want a clacky sounding keyboard. However, they were $10 more for a full set than these milk candies. So while they're both great switches with great factory lubing, which makes them smoother and sound better, it ultimately comes down to your personal preference. But that's $17 added to our budget. Now, to install a switch, just make sure that the pins line up with your hot swap socket, which, yes, this board is hot swappable, which means you won't need to solder, and then plop the switches in. It's super easy. Just be careful not to force it too hard if you feel weird resistance, as you might pop out a socket. Personally, I suggest you use a little bit of magic to install them really quickly, but if magic isn't available, then maybe consider subscribing and you might get a little bit of magic of your own. But now, what's going on? I can't type on my keyboard with just the switches, it's just switches, ah!
You guys know we had to buy the $2 keycap set. Oh yeah, and did I mention I bought the whole set of Capybara keycaps?
Okay, he pull up, hop out at the after party.
I'm not getting copyrighted. Now, when buying incredibly cheap keycaps like this, I'm probably gonna expect quality issues, color issues, maybe they won't fit on the keyboard that right. And not to mention, the support for a bunch of different layouts is very, very minimal. So be careful when you're buying these at home, but let's try them out. Why am I so small? Why am I so small?
Now, the quality and price for keycaps ranges insanely. Like, these were $2, definitely bargain bin keycaps.
Okay, but why do these look kind of decent? What the? Oh, that's potentially worrying. There's some defects. Yep, there's some problems.
Now, these are double shot PBT, but there's also die sub PBT, double shot ABS. You might have heard of GMK keycaps, which some people think are definitely the best, but I don't prefer them. It's kind of nuanced, and there's not a direct relation between the amount of dollars spent and quality. But for being slightly immoral clones,
We'll look at these more in a second, but first, Cappy Capybaras. Now, these are artisan keycaps, and I have no idea if they're stolen designs or anything. And you know, theoretically, you could put these on any keyboard, but I feel like this is part of the benefit to building your own. I mean, just look at these guys. And yes, I got AliExpress to pay for this.
Leave a comment if you want me to build a full capybara keyboard, I'll do it. Now, I also got these very strange X-ray keycaps for like $20 because I thought they'd be kind of cool. And this reminds me of ceramic keycaps and metal keycaps, both very strange keycaps that I've made videos on. Like, have you ever felt like you wanted to type on a toilet? Well, you can. And while these X-ray keycaps are incredibly interesting, I thought they wouldn't look good in a thumbnail, so I won't be using them. And of course, I really wanted to see how good these $2 to $3 keycaps were. And for a 65% keyboard like this, they fit on the board. So that was kind of insane. And if you need a tutorial of how to install keycaps, I hope you don't. I hope you don't. Now, there's so many other nuances to what you might want in a keyboard, like gasket mounting, making your keyboard feel softer and more pillowy. Or some people might want a board with a knob or a screen. But what I can say is that for around 80 bucks, this keyboard that I built turned out very nice. Now, this is just one budget example, and you can get really crazy expensive building a keyboard or really crazy cheap. And while you could get a similarly priced pre-built keyboard nowadays that offers you similar features,
wouldn't it be cool to say, I made this? Wow. Well, yeah, I think that is a pretty nice perk. But what if you were incredibly lazy or busy, or maybe you just wanted to get your feet wet on a nice keyboard? Let's find a bridge. Now, for the Bridge 75, I was pretty excited. A lot of you have told me it's a really good pre-built keyboard, and the amount of amazing 75% keyboards that have come out recently, I mean, just look at my last like 10 videos, has been insane. So I'm expecting this to be no different, right? Okay, fine. Finally, I'll look at the Bridge 75, and this is just one example of a pre-built keyboard. There are many others out there for many different layouts, many different colors. Some of them suck, and some of them are decent. Let's find out which one this is.
Now, we've learned how building your own keyboard can be way better for choice. So what does a pre-built even offer you? And let me start by saying the Bridge 75 is a very confusing pre-built keyboard. But what's also confusing is that the accessory package is like exactly the same as the keyboard that we built ourselves. Now, with pre-built keyboards, generally you get the advantage that you could just buy them and they're in stock and bada bing, bada boom. You have a keyboard. Look at how pretty it is. And there are lots of really incredible in-stock options, but some of the best have been kind of pre-orders like this one. Now, this keyboard is super similar to the Womier RD75, and a lot of my thoughts on it are actually almost identical to my thoughts on that last board. However, while this one is technically a pre-order anywhere in the US, you can get it in stock on AliExpress for just a bit more. It's up to you whether or not that's worth it though. And I've been shockingly impressed with how good some of these pre-built keyboards have gotten. It has a similar gasket mounting experience. For what's supposed to be $109, it looks really pretty and also feels pretty quality. But you're also relatively limited in layout options because as good as most of the pre-built keyboards are nowadays, the best ones seem to be in a 75% layout. Or a lot more expensive, oh my god. Now, the keycaps, basically the same quality as that $3 keycap set that we saw earlier, which isn't bad because the $3 keycaps were really impressive. The switches are really nice linear switches and remind me a lot of those HMX switches I tried earlier. And one thing that's new about a lot of pre-built keyboards nowadays is they also come hot swapped. So wait, I could buy a pre-built keyboard and then just customize it anyways? Yeah, but kind of. And that's actually the most compelling argument for a lot of these similarly priced pre-built keyboards. Because if a keyboard is similarly priced to a bare bones version, and it comes with keycaps and switches, even if you don't like those keycaps and switches, why not just, wait, why did that keyboard just pop off? Well, why not just swap it out really easily with some of these pre-built boards that are incredibly easy to mod with magnetic cases? Now, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, so please just go watch my Womier RD75 video because it does all of this, but just slightly better. But yeah, that makes things a little bit more complicated, doesn't it? Oh yeah, also I forgot to include more capybara footage, so he's about to pull up and hop out at the after party, and definitely all of his friends love to get naughty. Oh.
So then, is it better to build your own keyboard or to just buy one pre-built? Well, a couple years ago, I would tell you, of course, build your own keyboard. It's the only way to get the best keyboard. But nowadays, there's a lot more nuance. Like, you really have to take into account what you value in a keyboard. If you just want a basic 75% creamy sounding keyboard, honestly, go with pre-built. You're gonna get mileage and you can always mod it later. But if you want customization and the ability to choose your keycaps and choose your switches and kind of have a fun experience along the whole way, it's a no-brainer, build a keyboard. But what do you think? Am I unhinged? Is building a keyboard better? Not to mention, if you want a weird layout, like not just a basic 65%, or you want to do something really cool with software, building a keyboard is still so much better. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. Now here's a sound test.